Hey, what's good, people? This is the Option Podcast. I'm Jason DeBillius. That's Sarah Straton. This is episode 105, and the episode starts right now. What's up, people? You've asked, and now you shall receive. Because for me, I've got to give the people what they want. Sarah Straton, what's up?
What is up? I ain't got to work on my karaoke skills, apparently.
Yeah, listen. There are levels to that, okay? Listen to me, you Olympian.
Yeah,
You
the
know
people
about
don't
levels.
want that. The people don't want my singing. So, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I know you've been following we're following the Olympics probably as much as I was, right?
I was.
And you as an avid, and we're going to go all over the place. So let me steer the wheel a little bit, and I promise I won't drive us off the cliff, okay? I
All
promise,
right.
okay? We
I'm
don't need to.
trusting you, which I don't know if that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
I don't know either, but here we are just the same. All right. For volleyball, skirt. So how about the because you're both an indoor and an outdoor player. I understand you play a little middle blocker, but it was predominantly beach, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really play that much indoor. I played a little bit like after high school. And, I was going to junior training camps when I was 18 and all these 12-year-olds because we're at the same level. I was just starting. But I pretty much got to beach early. And when I went back to Australia when I was playing beach, I ended up doing some indoor. Oh, and I played for the Las Vegas Vipers in the semi-pro indoor league over here, like way back in the 90s. So,
Oh, that's cool. The Vipers.
yeah.
I
But
remember
basically,
that team.
predominantly beach. I was not a solid indoor player.
No, but when the women, there was a big thing happening. Look, April and Alex won, right? 18 won. They were the heavy favorite a year ago. They were a heavy favorite 2 years ago, right? Them and Canada. And sometimes Brazil were affectionately 1A and 2, right? Rebecca, she had breakfast that morning, stuffed herself with some eggs and bacon. She could win the gold too. But beach did what they were supposed to. Indoor women,
I'm just going to jump in there because I
please.
think that actually the beach, I thought it was wide open because, yes, okay, a lot of Americans have this idea that Americans are going to win everything. And people who don't follow really
Not
closely,
me.
maybe,
Go ahead. Sorry.
but people who don't follow closely would have just expected the Americans to win. And they were definitely a favorite, but not a like heavy favorite because, I mean, how many different teams won FIVB tournaments that year? I mean, the
Yeah.
Aussies won one, the other, Kelly Clayson Sponsor won two. I
Duda
mean,
and
it was
Agatha, right? Won twice.
so
Clayton Sponsor, yeah, they went straight Jakari's mode and won 2 4 stars. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I watched the final with Wendy Jones. I was like, it's way more fun to watch. When you have kids, you tend to do a lot of stuff after kids go to bed and everything. And my kids are older now, so it's easier. And I was like, I don't want to sit on my couch and watch it by myself. So we watched it together. And I wore I pulled out one of my Olympic shirts from 2000 and wore that. So I had my Aussie stuff on and she didn't really wear American stuff, but I mean, I was happy for both whoever won. It wasn't as good of a game as I expected. I was
No.
delighted. I mean, April played when I was playing. I remember when she came out and beat us in her first tournament, and I was like, oh my God, who are these upstarts? With this bomb serve. But April's great. And then I played with Angie for a year and a half, with Angie Akers, who coached them. So it was really fun for me to see her win. So,
Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Straton, sorry, 2000 Olympian. Got to mention that. Got to play host for her own home country, which is like a dream thing. Just
good fun.
I had to plug that in and then come back to this. You're right, because the last 3 times the Aussies faced that the Alex and April. They'd won 2 of the last 3, and one of them was ugly. One of them was in Cancun. I mean, beat the brakes off of them. But that, I think that was the one they won the whole thing. They kind of like hit their stride. They won that last one in Cancun, Mexico. And totally agree with you. I think in 2019, before the world went to hell, we were looking at 1 and 1A. And then, like you said, when things started to come back, Duda and Agatha. Like, Duda could be a world beater and could be like like the next tournament. So I wasn't, she could win, but I was like, I'm not putting no money on that one, Sponsel and Clays, who I thought were competitors but not winners, made a liar out of me. Right? They won 2 of those tournaments to a 4-star, and like I said, went straight dragon mode. They just said it was like Game of Thrones. They just said Jakaris and and the dragons just burned down the whole village. That's what I described it as.
They're fun to watch. I think a lot, like them and the Aussies too. Like I love all this creative play, and I think the college system, and actually some of the Australians were doing it, and I think some of the international men's teams and women's teams have been doing it for a few years, but this way more creative offense with the over on 2s and actually using that as a weapon, like not just, it's not just the option, right?
No,
it's like we are deliberately doing this because they're not ready for it. Or how do you defend both? How do you defend a hard hit anywhere on 2 as well as being ready for the on 3?
It's true. Yeah, I personally thought Kelly went a little too much into the well on that. So I have a general rule about hitting on 2, because as an indoor setter, as a front row setter, I was always, I'm left-handed, so I was always trying to hit over, find ways to disrupt the defense, the outside blocker coming in. But for me, as a general rule, like if I don't see the middle blocker in my peripheral vision, like at least in the corner or leaving or whatever, the only exception is power. Like good things happen in beach volleyball when you hit the crap out of it, right? But yeah, I'm not gonna be out there poking at something that I don't see. And I thought she did that a little too much,
And that, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you use it as a choice, but you don't. If it's not working, you don't keep doing it. It's the same when you're hitting. When you're the third hit, you don't do the same thing over and over if it's not working.
No. So. That was beach. And did you follow indoor at all a little bit?
I did. I watched some of it.
Please. Sorry, you're going to say something.
I followed. It was hard. Life is busy. And I would pull it up and I'd watch as many as I could. I watched as many games as I could. I definitely saw the last few games. It was super fun. And years ago, I had a great conversation with Karch about coaching, about indoor coaching, or just coaching in general. And we talked about parenting and stuff like that, and about giving the players autonomy, and building the connection, building the relationships, within the team, and also like with the coach and the team, and just sort of building that kind of family and the trust. So it was really heartening to just see how much it meant to him. And one of the things that I noticed too, I don't know if you saw this, like after they won and the girls came off, and he said to them, you did it. Like, he didn't say we did it. And I thought that was key, because he's like, I'm here. And this is the thing that I'm learning. I'm doing a master's in positive psychology and coaching psychology. I have 1 semester to go. But in coaching, you talk about this idea of getting the best out of whoever it is you're coaching. But then it's like, what do you do to help them get the best out of themselves? And so as a coach, that's what he was doing. And he's not taking credit, even though he has a lot of credit to take. He's not taking credit. He facilitated their growth and their performance, but it wasn't his to own. And I thought that was so admirable, because how many coaches will be like, hey, I'm the greatest. This was all me. They would never have done it without me.
In the South Bay.
Oh, totally. But he's like, this is yours. Like, I'm so grateful that I was along for the ride and I could have some small part in it, but this was yours.
Yeah. I when I interviewed for this is random, like a college interview, just for like a head coaching job. I coached NCAA for 12 years. They asked me what my greatest strength was. I told them I personalize my work. Like the job doesn't stop when I leave the court. I'm emotionally invested. I want these good things for these kids. And they asked me what my weakness was. And Karch might appreciate this, and so will you. I personalize my work. It's the same thing. My strength and my weakness. It hurts too much to want something for someone who works so hard and put in all that time, and then for them to face that kind of disappointment. It hurts way too much. And a Karch, who we both know is this uber big competitor, had to find a way to compartmentalize the grief and frustration, and just say, hey, I'm not a player anymore. I'm a coach. They need, sometimes, especially more for men than women, they need to see strength and leadership. Women is more strength through camaraderie and emotional investment in each other. The studies show. But he knew having to show that poker face and some of these disappointments that led up to this victory was something that helped carry him through. And when you see someone break down like him and cry like that post-match interview, it's real. It's real, because Karch has always tried to emote strength and leadership, because he knows he carries the weight of being the best player to ever play the game, indoor and beach. Indoor, and three out of 4 times UCLA, 2 gold medals, numerous world championships, and then hit the beach. He was just getting started, first gold medal. So he knew, as a coach, he's carrying a lot of weight that some of it maybe undeserving, right? He's still a person. He's not like this machine.
He's human, and he'd be the first to admit it.
But to see that man's face. No, this is the only reason why I ever brought up indoor volleyball, because I know beach. We're going to talk more to our wheelhouse now, beach. But I knew, because we're both kind of old school, that we would really appreciate that post game speech, and just how he couldn't even he was so emotional, he couldn't even he couldn't even put words together. Didn't we cry for that guy a little bit in a good way?
It was lovely. It's like, I just seeing how much it meant to them, to all of them, and him particularly, but just it was lovely.
Yeah, God, I'm about to cry right now just talking about it. And the girls, even a day later, they're still crying. They're getting the gold medal. They're still crying. They're like, whatever. They're still trying to take it all in. And I guess the point I was trying to make is, when, as a competitor, as a longtime competitor like yourself, when you put in all this work and all this sacrifice, you lose relationships. Your boyfriend leaves. It's like you already got a boyfriend. I'm out. Volleyball. So, and you put in your best, and then sometimes you win, and then sometimes you put in your best and you lose, and you're like, should I be doing this? Am I good enough? And all of these things, sometimes a decade, sometimes 2 decades, that lead you to this moment. There's no words for me to describe for people that don't understand that. Because there's certain people that play volleyball recreationally, they're volleyball enthusiasts. There's some people that compete and they're like, oh, the hell with this. This is too much. This ain't gonna be my 24-hour experience. That's what I got out of it. And I felt like they won for every team that won the silver. The bronze in 2016, that was worthy of the gold. That won the silver, that team was worthy of the gold. And that team in 2008 that also won the silver, that was worthy of the gold. 92 bronze, 84 silver. The women's program has never won a gold.
Right.
So,
and this is the thing, that so many things have to come together to win. Because I remember, I think it was Bodie Miller. Remember the skier? So Bodie Miller, I remember hearing him interview, I think it was on the Today Show or something during one of the Olympics. And he said, he was like, I have had runs that I thought were kind of crappy where I won a gold medal, and some of the best runs of my life that I didn't. And so he said, I don't look to that. So for him, it was all about his best performance. And I think it takes a little bit of luck as well. It's not just, hey, you said deserving of a gold medal, worthy of a gold for, bronze and silver and whatever. Wasn't to be, because things didn't align. It didn't. And you think about all these teams that have won tournaments, we're talking about on the beach, have won tournaments that year, that everything aligned and they happen on that day in that tournament. And that's the thing is I think at the Olympics, it is a snapshot of how that particular tournament went. And yes, there's a lot of not every team can win, but those teams are all at a really high level.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to having that freedom to risk, to be able to go for it and not be holding. There's this idea of like putting too much weight on it. Like you can't, this is where it comes back to the psychology of it, right? This idea that your self-esteem can't be too tied up with your performance. Because if it is, there's that tightness, like, oh, if I lose, I'm not okay. And I'm only okay when I win. Like we can't have that. I mean, you see a lot of top performers who do have that, but it's not healthy. Like speaking of mental health, right? It's not healthy for anyone. And so I don't know, I feel like they do need to have that freedom to risk and that excitement to go for it and they will get over it. Like when they lose, they're allowed to grieve. And actually, interestingly, Jason, I remember you posted something in one of the, there was kind of a controversy a little bit, where you posted in one of the groups on Facebook about, I think it was one of the guys.
It was Micah Christensen.
Yeah, he was crying after they lost.
Right.
And you were kind of like, man up, you need to be strong. You don't deserve to hang your head low or whatever it is. And to me, I feel like when you've put so much on the line, like you talk about, so much sacrifice, you're working so hard, this is the one, you're excited, and you get to where you actually don't make it. And so then the dream is over. Like I remember, sorry, I'm jumping around here. Sorry about that.
This is the option podcast.
This is ADHD, I'm telling you. But the fact is, like when you lose and you put everything in there, you have to have an opportunity to grieve. And then once you grieve, you come back. Yep. And it's not about pretending that it didn't mean anything to you.
Right.
But it's about, hey, that did mean something to me. They really did mean something to me. This dream that I had for maybe a decade, at least for 4 years of winning an Olympics is over. And it's a funny thing about the Olympics. I remember talking to someone about the difference between the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony at the Olympics. At the opening ceremony, everyone is equal. Everyone's equal. All the athletes, you're marching in and everyone's super excited. And it's a level playing field. Everyone's like, oh my God, I might have the tournament of my life. I might have the performance of my life. I could be a medalist. Like everyone's feeling like that. And at the end of the closing ceremony, you've got the haves and the have-nots, like the people who were so happy with how they went and the people who were disappointed because the dream that they had of like, maybe this could be the time, they don't have it.
Right. Look, for me, defending myself a little bit, my exact words on that Facebook post was, I said, hey, you pick your freaking head up. Don't put your head down. Stand tall like the man we know you are. Those are my words, meaning that if you have to cry, then cry. You don't have to worry about people seeing your tears. That's where people took the whole man thing, right? And took man and I felt like a little bit, I could have worded it differently, but I also felt like people used that thing as a straw man fallacy. They use the whole man thing, like it's okay. I mean, so many posts, it's okay for a man to cry. And I'm just like, yeah, it's okay for a man to cry. All I'm saying is that he looked like there is a process, right? You need some time to yourself. And then after that, you stand tall. And right. I was under the impression that everyone knew what I thought. What I was trying to say was don't keep your head buried in the sand in some kind of unfounded shame. There is nothing for that man to be ashamed of. That man is, in our opinion, if you followed men's volleyball, he was the best setter in the world. And this is not just the United. You know how the United States, they think they're the best at everything.
Right.
Look, I'm gonna be the first one to say Taylor Crabb is not even top 5 defender. All right, because I watch things outside of the United States. Taylor, you're my brother. Maybe not my brother. You're my dude, but No. But everyone was saying Micah Christensen's the best setter in the world. He can only take care of things that he can control. They were out of system 70% of the time. And this includes like down ball, free balls that they chose to pass to the 10-foot line to a setter that can hit with both hands on two, that can disrupt the defense, that can have the outside blocker pick up his on two so he could back set to Matt Anderson out of D zone, or even run a back one, or just run a front one, let the middle wrist away where that blocker's going up and down, that outside blocker's going up and down. That's just the X's and O's of volleyball that I was like, no, dude, you're sad now, but you pick your freaking head up, and stand tall like the man, not a man, the man we know you are. So I'm only defending myself a little bit, but not a lot, because I could have worded it differently. If I worded it differently, I wouldn't have got so many posts like that. So obviously something's up.
Well, and I think the issue is that I think that was right afterwards.
Yeah.
And you said he's allowed to cry and have his moment, and then picked his head up. And I think this was right when he was having his moment.
Yep.
And he will pick his head up. And I suppose the question is what we're interpreting as his head down as meaning. Like, is it, I'm ashamed? But I don't know that it was. I think it was disappointment. And that's the difference, is being able to say, hey, when you're done grieving, then know that we're all really proud of you. Like, or we all appreciate what you've done and we think you're great and you did everything you could. We're not judging you. Like, and it's disappointing. And so I suppose that's where that sort of nuance lies.
And that's actually more correct. As elite athletes, I mean, I got this in when I played in Germany. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of shame. There was just, you felt like, you could feel like you let people down, and at the same time, you're not ashamed. It wasn't like this complete shame. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah. And it's that disappointment. It is. It's the goal or the dream or whatever that you had and that you were excited for, but it's not happening. Like anytime you lose a game, you're excited. You're like, there's a chance I could win this. I mean, there might be a good chance or a bad, or a big chance or a small chance, but you're excited with the possibility, because that's why they play the games, right? Because anyone can win. If give the trophy to the number one seed.
Sarah, I want to continue to have a conversation about how enthusiasm, athletes' enthusiasm, can work against them sometimes. We touched on it a little bit before I started defending myself. Because look, if anyone that knows me, I was raised by, I have 3 sisters, 3 aunts. I know about being okay for a man to cry. Okay, but when you're raised by women, you already acknowledge it's okay for a dude to cry. Okay. In theater, sometimes if an actor goes up there and says, I'm gonna be, goes on stage and says, I'm gonna be great, they're not going to be great. Any professor, any long-term actor. So I'm translating that to volleyball a little bit. Sometimes somebody wants something so bad where that enthusiasm works against them. And I guess you're an Olympian, former Olympian, or however that term's supposed to be.
You still get to just say Olympian.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just like they get to call, what's his name, Mr. President, right? Like Carter or whatever. He's still called Mr. President. Olympian. Right. You are an Olympian. You're an elite athlete. And you're a mom that actually, sent your kid to set for some schmuck from Brooklyn for a club team called Evolution, right? So how, as a player and as a parent, because parents are coaches too, do we, because I've been coaching longer than some people have lived, even on the pro scene, I'd like you to take a first stab at this. How do we get kids to understand the difference between wanting it and just getting out there and playing and letting the result take care of itself?
I think the key is separating who they are from what they do. So by that, I mean exactly what I was talking about with this idea of their self-esteem not riding on their performance, because that's what makes them not want to go for it. They act like these kids. Sometimes they act like they don't care because they don't want to be too invested. But this idea of, hey, I'm still okay, and believing they can do it because they've practiced and they've worked hard and they've put in this effort and they trust their teammates and they trust themselves and being enthusiastic. It's okay to be enthusiastic. It's okay to want it, but you can't want it because that's the only way you'll feel good. And that's the difference. I mean, I've seen it a lot with the players who really need it for their self-esteem. And luckily some of them actually do perform and that fuels them. And it's the same with parenting, it's this negative, like, if you don't do that, then you're a loser. You're a terrible kid if you don't do the right thing, or you'll be a good kid if you do what I say. We have to separate who they are from what they do, know that they're amazing, and it's worth trying. It's worth trying to be the best you can be. And there's, it doesn't mean anything about who you are. I don't know.
I said this on a previous podcast, but it bears repeating in this case. Chael Sonnen, mixed martial artist, former UFC fighter, and just extraordinary personality, once said, "They say that losing is not an option. I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Losing is an option. Losing is the most readily available option all the time, always there when you need it." So he said, if you're one of these players that has this hang up, that's worried about being great, or just worried in this moment where you have all this invested and there's all this pressure on you to win or this or that, he said, I want you to realize two very important things. One, most likely the other team's feeling it too. Your opposition's feeling the same thing you are. And two, it's natural. The reason why I think some kids can't, and elite athletes can't compartmentalize this, is because they think that they're the only ones that are feeling this form of pressure that they might categorize as a weakness, especially in men. And male players probably five times more than women, right? Especially male athletes. And we as coaches and as parents, I got a 4-year-old, and I know I got to bring her up there too, but we have to constantly tell these kids, hey, next play, or hey, let's do this, or we could have negative talk creep up in their head, like, oh yeah, nice coverage, or this or that, just so I guess that's the challenge for us as mentors to some of these kids who want to play a sport, albeit at a competitive level. There's so many levels to it, right? There's even so many levels to open, right? I mean, I see an open tournament out there, I'm like, that's not open.
Well, I think this idea of them being confident, right? You want them to be confident, but there's a difference between that and bragging and puffing themselves up and trying to make themselves out as better than they are, this sort of false bravado. There's a big difference there, because I see these players, these kids, these athletes, different, obviously all the different levels. And some of them are just like, I'm great. I'm so great. And you never hear the best players in the world tell you how great they are. If you're good enough, people will tell you you're great. You don't have to tell them, like, you don't have to convince anyone. But I hate this idea of fake it till you make it. But I like the idea of build up the confidence with evidence. So it's like, I know that here's what I used to do. Like, if I shanked a ball, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I suck. I wouldn't be like, I'm awesome. I'd be like, oh, I know I can pass. I've passed so many balls before. It's like, here's what I do. And I would go back to technique or whatever. But it's like going back, I know I have a history, and you've done enough passes in practice. You've seen serves like that before. You can do it. And that's what you draw on. It's not like, if I tell myself enough, then I'm going to believe it. It's about, I'm going to believe it because I truly have done that before. And that's where I think we do it with parenting and with sports, is like, help our kids, like when they're scared to go meet new people, you're like, oh, help them like remember a time when they actually were new to a place and they made friends, so that then they can draw on that and go, oh yeah, I feel confident because I'm moving forward, because I know I've done that before, and that sort of builds up their confidence and their agency.
That makes complete sense. And As far as a right way to go, I mean, there's so many ways to go. I think I'm a co-sign on that, you know? When I played for a long time, and this is a curse, I had the devil on my shoulder was always there. And it was somewhere to a point where I just look at him, I'm like, okay, it's you again. You know, sometimes I look twice and to make sure it's not a new devil or whatever. I'm like, oh, it's only you. You know, and I'll go into a tournament as a top seed, like a grass tournament, and I play the last seed on center court, and I think I'm going to lose. There's this ridiculous, I wouldn't want anybody to ever navigate his career the way I did. I was spastic on the inside because I'm again, you talk about fake it till you make it. I didn't. The fake it till you make it only applies because you don't want the other team. We as athletes don't want the other team to think we're scared.
Right.
So there is a level of where fake it till make it is justified, depending on the
It's a
athlete.
building
It's an acute
confidence,
case.
right?
It's definitely acute case. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no, I was going to say it's definitely like it's the building the confidence, and how can we do that authentically rather than it being more just like faking and putting on this this false face.
Yeah.
Because I think there's such a difference too in playing not to lose and playing because you feel free to win, like
Right.
playing because you're not scared to lose, that you can go for it and win.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. There was so much discussion going on about all those missed serves, which obviously there were a ton of missed serves, both in the beach and in indoors. And this whole idea of just keep it in. You don't want to just keep it in. You have to go for it. And if you're getting points and you're used to getting points on your bomb serve or whatever serve, then you're going to be aggressive.
Right.
Yes, there is something to a higher percentage serve, but it's not about like just keeping it in. You're not going to lob them an easy one because then they're just going to bomb it and build more confidence for themselves.
Yeah.
Because they got a free ball play basically. So
Well,
I don't know. It's
I only
interesting
think,
to think
honestly, I only think amateurs and Monday morning quarterbacks would put someone in that false dichotomy. Somewhere between serving tough and missing, and somewhere between serving a lollipop and getting licked. All right. Not only that,
Yeah.
but giving them momentum and more confidence that you're scared to actually serve, it makes it even worse. Which makes someone say, "Dude, I'd rather miss." But
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle of that is that gray area where you can serve tough enough, like a volleyball mammal. All right, someone that walks on two legs, drinks water, and knows how to serve. For Sparrow, it's really about knowing his clientele. Is his team good enough to serve out 14 times and still win? Because Sarah, we know there are teams out there. There were teams actually in the Olympics, in this very Olympics, and in that very sex, and in that very venue, men's indoor, that were able to miss 14 serves and still win 3-0.
Yeah, because their side out game was so solid.
Yes, the
And
French,
they were getting
the French,
aces and-
dude, the French were
yeah.
like their passing game was dimes. Oh my God, the women's indoor
That
team.
was such a fun game.
Wasn't it?
The final?
The
Oh my
Russia,
God.
the what do you call a Russian Olympic Committee against France?
Yeah. That final was amazing.
It was, but it came down to game 5, and it came down to France passing absolute dimes, just dimes, Sarah. The U.S. indoor women's team, dimes. I remember Kevin Barnett told Paul Sunderland, like at match point, he said, "See, you don't have to be a great passing team to win the gold." And Sunderland's like, "Dude, they're the best passing team in the tournament. What the hell you right? What the hell are you talking about?" So that was a cool disagreement I wanted to cite as a sidebar. But the question I was going to say, and I guess we could wrap that part up there. They weren't good enough to miss 14 times and win. That one. And two, it's up to Sparrow and his army of coaches. I don't know what the hell all those people are doing on the sideline to help him, to assist, to know that let's change our serving strategy. Let's go to jump floater. Because Venezuela, whenever they hand passed, they would jump and they would do this, that. And even the balls that went to the target, the ball would lose a lot of its up and down trajectory. And the setter would lose some of his peripheral vision. So they're in system, but not really, because the setter doesn't know if Sparrow is spread blocking, which I thought was a mistake, or if he changed up to like somewhere between spread blocking, like leaving the middle by himself to defend the red and the go ball, and swing blocking where you have to give up line on both sides of the net. Like there are variations of blocking strategies. Like I call it loose goose. I played in Germany, where you put one hand on your middle shoulder, on your middle hitter's shoulder, and that's all the space you need, because they're running a slow one, step, block with them. Just step up, and now the middle blocker doesn't have to step out and back in to swing block with you to help fill the hole, which I think is more the outside blocker's responsibility than the middle's. So I just thought it was. I mean, he got a lot of blowback, and a lot of it was deserved because it wasn't. I don't think it was. It was an actual strategy against this team to let the middles go to match up 1-on-1 because they had size. Our middles
but
had size.
back to
over
the
us.
serving,
Yeah,
it's more
please.
about like how do you have a tough, higher percentage serve?
Right. That's that gray area, Sarah, right? Well, I mean,
Totally.
ain't nobody saying, I mean, anyone out there saying serve a lollipop, man. I mean, yeah. Look, I criticize them too. And there's people that are going to post like, what are your qualifications? And I'm like, what are my qualifications? Okay. Yeah. All right, bro. Like I need to be a chef to know how to cook steak. There's certain things you could talk about on a certain level. And then when it reaches a level beyond my level of maintenance, which in my ego is rare because we've done this a long time. We can consider ourselves experts. All right, I'm an expert. So are you. So what's my qualifications? All right, go kick rocks. What are you? So, but anyway, I have so much fun stuff to talk about with the Olympics and this and that. But I want to educate our audience on what you've been up to. With the whole, I've done a little research on Sarah. For anyone that wants to know our relational correlation, I was her son's club coach. Her son Zach was a skateboard guy, and I made a skateboard guy a setter, and he COVID. Look, when the world went to hell, we had less gym time, and I got to tell you, that kid, what for that position that requires so much attention and this and that. I gotta give him an A. I gotta give him an A minus.
He came into it really late because I didn't put any pressure on him
Yep.
to play volleyball at all. And he ultimately, when it was 8th grade, decided he wanted to play volleyball. And I was like, all right. And then he got an injury and couldn't play volleyball. And so his
Right.
first experience was in high school. And so at that point, you're playing with kids who've all been playing, since they were 8.
And it's
especially in this
Redondo too,
area.
right? And it's Redondo. It's a competitive
God.
boys program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so because he never played baseball. So I'm going to tell you, make sure your kids try all the sports when they're little. So because he never played baseball, never did a throwing sport, he didn't have the hitting, didn't have the whole like lower body movement, arm swing type thing. And so he couldn't really hit. So it's like, all right, I'm going to be a setter because I can't hit. And I was like, you do know that's the hardest position off the court. But yeah, and so he came in really late, and his first season really was with you, and he was the only setter. And so it was sort of like trial by fire,
Yeah.
really figuring it out.
He didn't burn though.
No,
He didn't
I think
burn.
he
He welcomed the fire. You know what I'm saying? It made his hair a little blonder, but he welcomed the fire. I like that kid. Sarah, I love considering the given circumstances, considering that team, that club team as a collective whole, and what we had to work with. We had two 15-year-olds playing 17s, right? We had Donovan
Zach
Ivy,
was 15.
right? We had Brian Ivy's nephew, 15, playing 17. So
I think half the team were 15,
yeah.
playing 17s. I mean, Zach was 15 that whole season too. So
It was strangely one of my favorite seasons because these kids gave me their heart. And they went in there and they worked to the maximum of their potential, which to some might not have been enough, but people don't understand where I'm coming from or what's enough for me, selfishly.
they lost a lot of games.
Yeah.
But if you're not looking at, and you shouldn't be just looking at the wins and losses, they developed. They all got better and they came together as a team, and they had some moments where they won matches that they weren't expected to win, and they had a good time.
It's the only picture. I've been with Evolution for 5 years. It's the only picture I kept. I got one, the very first one, the 16s with Thunderbird and those guys or whatever, and this one. So my first year and my last year are the only two pictures I kept. It was the best team I ever coached, 16s, and probably the worst 17s we ever coached.
No.
But we're playing over their head. We're playing 18s with kids that were underage and a setter that didn't have the same amount of experience as the other setters had. So, but
he wouldn't have had that opportunity, like in terms of like he didn't start at 8. And he
Right.
didn't start really early as a setter or any of that
No.
stuff. So I think it was fun for him to get to actually,
Hell yeah.
because he was the only setter, he wasn't going to be subbed off.
No.
So you had to figure it out. And I feel like that's kind of a good thing that these players, like, they need to feel free to take risks, to go for it, because no one's out there going, that's it, you made one mistake, you're off.
Yeah. I got to do some real work.
Yeah, you did.
Dude, I felt like I had a real job. I got to do some Sarah. I mean, yeah. It's fun for some of these guys to be an okay mechanic in a room full of Ferraris, man. I'm sitting there turning Pintos into Tauruses, man. That was fun work. Your kid's a Taurus.
That's hilarious.
That might even be his sign. She's like, wait, is it?
Oh.
So, Sarah, tell me what you're doing as far as effective communication for relationships, for good parenting and stuff like that. Tell my audience what you've been up to lately, or what you do or what you've been doing.
Okay, you want the long version or the short version?
It's the option. It is
The
the
option.
option podcast.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the semi-long version. In 2010, the AVP went under, and I had knee surgery, and it was probably about time for me to move on anyway. And right around that time, I had a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, I think. And I did a parenting class that was all about, like, how do we support kids to help themselves? How do we basically build relationships with our families so that they can thrive, so that they can be self-motivated, so that they can actually do their best without us being, having the carrot and the stick, right? Without us sort of dangling rewards and like punishing them, but more like, how do we facilitate their growth? And I decided to do this parent educator training, not because I wanted to be a parenting educator, but because I thought the people who are taking the parenting classes are already putting their kids, are already like going, they already believe that, like they already get it. They've already kind of had that shift. The other people who really need it are still putting their kids in sports. And so my goal was, I'm taking this parent educator training because I want to bring this style of communication, this style of relating, and I suppose helping facilitate growth to youth sports. And so I ended up, because it only takes like one, as you know, from having like a teacher or a coach, it only takes one connected adult to really alter the life and the trajectory of a child's life. And so I was like, why can't that be the coach, right? It doesn't have to be the parents. The parents could be just horrific, but you have that one coach and it changes their life. And so I was like, I'm going to bring this to sports. So I ended up doing the training, and they asked me to teach for them. And then I ended up teaching the parenting class. And one person in one of the first classes I taught sent me an email. She said, I'm sure you know this, but you're changing the world one family at a time. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I guess this is what I'm doing now. So I've mostly been teaching parenting classes, working with families, working one-on-one with people. And then I also, in between, I was volunteer assistant for Stein at UCLA for the beach program, which was really fun. I got to bring a lot of the stuff that I'd worked on in terms of this relationship building and autonomy and support, autonomy support for athletes, and how to just sort of help build their confidence and their, and their just ability to self-motivate, help to bring that, and the relationships, really helping that to sports. And so that was a really fun year. And then just a couple of years ago, I decided I wanted a master's. And so I am doing a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. And getting one-on-one coaching has been amazing. And I think everyone needs it, because the idea behind coaching is that the person that you're coaching has everything they need within themselves to get to where they want to be. And your job as a coach is to facilitate that. Your job as a coach is to bring that out of them by asking the right questions. And oh my goodness, if I'd known, back 20, 30 years ago, I don't know. I feel like I could have done much more than I have. But anyway, so now I want to bring that both to the parenting side, but also to young adults, like to teenagers, to kids, and help parents use that coaching approach because you don't have to fix things for your kids. It's okay for them to be upset. We can hold space for their emotions, make sure you maintain the relationship so that they trust you and actually come to you as a consultant when they're older. Because if you destroy the relationship when they're little by just like basically manipulating them or forcing them to do things or having them fear you, when they're teenagers, they're not going to come to you. Right? They're not actually, they don't have the relationship with you. And later on, like they're not coming back. Like you lose them once they leave. And so I think for me, it's like I feel like coaching is all about relationships and parenting is all about relationships. And it's just so now I'm basically trying to combine everything together to help parents so that they can have a better relationship with their kids so that these kids can move out into the world and know what they need, know that they can solve their own problems, know that they can manage their own emotions. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I've got a couple more months, and I'm done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My goodness, that's not a long version. Sarah. That was just right. And I think I speak for both of us that there are a lot of coaches out there, and I guess I'm highlighting old school coaches that have an old school approach that could have a little bit more balance in their life. I'm not suggesting to some of those old school coaches that they should get rid of their style of coaching altogether. They should, but what they should be able to do is recognize certain personalities in kids. Like I'm not saying kids are a type of person. Oh, that's a challenger defender kid. That's the schizoid character. That's this and that. Because in acting, we learn about that too. Like movement for actors, we
But
learn about different characters.
temperament matters. Like
Hmm.
kids need different things. I mean, children, your own
Hmm.
children, as well as the kids you coach, they need different things to motivate themselves.
Yeah, I think the thing that divides some of the good old school coaches and the bad old school coaches is punishment versus challenge.
Mhm.
Like like if one person wins and the rest of the team has to do suicides. If a parent looks at the team doing suicides as a punishment for losing, as opposed to I guess consequence to alternative to the winner is 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 what determines when a coach says, "All right, everybody back line." Do you
I
know what I'm
guess the
saying?
question is,
Yeah, please.
what are the athletes interpreted as? If they're like, oh my
Hmm.
God, this coach is an asshole.
Right.
I
Yep.
hate this guy. I
Yep.
can't believe he's doing this. And I hate you, guy who missed it,
Hmm.
who hit the ball in the net. It's your fault that we're doing this.
And it's toxic
Right.
for women's volleyball too.
Yeah, and I think it's for all of them. It's like
Hmm.
how do we got to think about what the goal is? Like what are we trying to improve?
Hmm.
Right? Is it about how it's like where are we trying to get better? And is running suicides as a punishment, does that actually make you get better?
Right. But as again, there's a difference between punishment and consequence. Like if they already know up front the winner does this, the losers have to line up. It's something that makes them want to be first and gives them a competitive edge, as opposed to a kid making a mistake and then everybody else lining up everyone to punish everybody for that one kid's mistake, right? And
But
and and again, please.
don't you think that if you have a harsh consequence on the end,
Uh huh.
that they're going to play not to lose?
I think that depends on the kid. I think that's the responsibility of the coach to know who his kids are. Is the kid going to play keep away ball? Which is tough to do in volleyball, right? There's no keep away ball. You actually have to reach a score. You can't get a lead and wait till the clock expires. So all of the studies that I point out, I'm very, very adamant about vetting all the studies that I read. I want to know the sample size. I want to know the sport they're playing. I want to know the sport they're playing at a different level. I want to know if it's men's and women's, because we know men's is more through leadership and performance, and women's is more through camaraderie and sisterhood. I want to know how long the study's been done. I want to know, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't. I'm one of those guys who actually values the science, but I use the word science collected. right? Because there's so much science we don't understand because some of these studies are lazy, and even peer-reviewed ones. The peers are just reviewing that they agree on the lurking variables. But I'm like, are the people seeing the lurking variables? No, they're not. Okay, you saw it, and of course you reviewed it. But so it's one of those things where I just want to keep. That's what this podcast is all about. We want to keep asking the question. We want to keep asking the question.
Okay, I
So
have a question for you. All
I'm
right.
still
So,
straight. I'm not gay.
so
Oh
my,
no!
no, my,
Whoa, sorry. You have a sorry. So what was the other question? Sorry, Sarah.
no, my question for you is the punishment, okay, consequence, whatever. Is that because you think that the team didn't want it enough, weren't trying hard enough to win? Right. The reason I'm saying
Right.
this is because if we're questioning their motivation,
Uh
if
huh.
we've built this relationship and we've supported these players to a point where you know that they care about doing their best and trying hard,
Right.
then we shouldn't need to be adding these extrinsic motivators,
Right.
right? Whether that's, and I mean, I have this, so I did this whole research project about motivation, and I know a ton about like all the different levels of motivation. And the absolute worst of it, the least effective or effective for the wrong reasons and not long-term effective, is these extrinsic motivators.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, if you're like, these kids are making mistakes or these kids are not trying, I think to me, it's more about looking at that and going, how do I help them build their percentages? How do I help them? And if they're not trying, why are they not trying? Why are they not putting effort? Is it because they're scared to lose? Because
Right.
they want to look like kind of cool, look like I don't care, because then if I lose, at least I didn't lose trying, because if I tried and lost, then my self-esteem would feel bad. If I gave everything and lost, then I would be a terrible player or whatever. And so, and if it's that, then we need to unpack that and
Yes.
help them to sort of build that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like, I personally don't believe in let's give some external motivator, because I think that there are other ways that actually get to the root of the problem, instead of like going on the outside and saying, hey, if you lose, you're going to have to do something.
Agreed. For me, I've changed a lot of my practices. I mean, I was an old school guy for a long time, and a lot about me is still old school. But I'll give you an example, two examples. One was a reward system. Like, if somebody won a drill, their reward was to do the left and right drill, like pass left and right, which some people are like, that's the reward. That's what the winners get. What the hell do the losers get? But what happens is, when the other team is watching this player go back and forth, and eventually by the 10th ball comes, you have to dive and then get up and dive again. What happens is a player comes up to me and says, Coach, can I do it next? And I'm like, well, if you win the next drill, yeah, sure. So now something would someone consider a punishment is like, wait a second, I think I want to do that. And that, at least for boys volleyball, changed the competitive psyche in some of the teams. And I guess I'm highlighting the team that I coached last with Evolution, but it's worked every single year. I will only make people go backline. This is the second example, and I'll give you the floor. I will only give someone punishment or consequence if I tell people to jog it out and they're walking. I don't, like, I don't, I'm okay with people trying and failing, but not trying at all and like you said, that's something maybe we talk after practice, like, hey, what gives? Understanding the kid and this and that, and maybe it is a repair and replace thing for what I'm doing right or wrong on that. Go ahead.
I feel like that is that I hear that from coaches a lot. Like, I can handle anything except for lack of effort. Right.
Right.
That's the thing. I hear it from coaches all the time. And that's where I think it's trying to understand what's going on, because they want to do well.
Yeah. I
You
think on
know,
a general level they do. Yeah.
yeah. And they want, and it's fun. And like, they don't want you to be pissed off with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right. And this is the thing that, and if they, I think Mike Gervais posted recently on LinkedIn something about this idea of seeing feedback as a gift,
Mm-hmm.
rather than a criticism, of like, instead of saying you suck, it's saying, I think you can be better. And that's something ideally that we as parents and as coaches can instill in players of like, hey, I'm giving you this because I want to help you because I believe you can be better. And let's work on developing, like you were saying, like, hey, you now have an opportunity. I'm giving you an opportunity to be better by doing this extra drill. Of like, that's great. That's like, hey, look at how much better you can get. And so I still, I mean, I think we probably have a lot of work to do to figure out how to support these kids who are, some of them are put in sports when they don't want to do it. Like
Hmm.
their parents sign them up. They're like, you have to do a sport, you have to do this or whatever. And they're just kind of going through the motions. And we have to really be careful about that. Because if our goal is to have people who are active for the rest of their lives, who enjoy playing sports or enjoy being active, then if we force them to do stuff, we're doing the opposite. They
Agreed.
end up going, oh,
Yeah.
I hate this, it's stupid.
Oh yeah. I mean, look. Think about the United States Army. Think about it's a volunteer army now, right? There's no drafter, and you can't be drafted anymore. Not since like '81. There is punishment and consequences for lack of performance, but it might be a bad example because these are situations where if you make the mistake, it might cost you your life. So I don't use it as an example because these are not juniors, right? These are fully grown, mature adults. Maybe some not old enough to drink, but old enough to sign a dotted line and defend the Constitution. So you see something that's worked for in that institution where people actually come out saying everybody should serve at least 2 years. Everyone that I know that served. This includes me. I'm a Gulf War vet. All right, and my father before me, and my father before him, my father before him, and my sister, first female, 2 tours in Afghanistan, kid sister. Every single one of them thinks that like everybody should like at least enlist for like 2 years. Like if there was like a 1 year enlistment where you could do the boot camp and then AIT, you learn like a particular trade. Like I learned diesel generators or whatever. I supported MI, or be a chairborne ranger. We call some people like finance. We call them chairborne rangers instead of airborne
Mhm.
rangers. There is something to be said about that form of thing that has worked, that has instilled discipline, and in fact that has encouraged other people to encourage people to do that. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's really interesting thinking about discipline and thinking about self-discipline
Uh
and where it comes from. And this is something that we talk about in the whole coaching community, coaching like the life coaching, sort of individual coaching community,
Yep.
of not necessarily being about discipline imposed on you, but how do you build that? How do you reflect within yourself and figure out what strategies you need to put in place so that you can be better, right? So that you can get to your goal. So, and that comes from, like for me, for example, I know that when I get on my phone, that I tend to like get lost and will go on Facebook or I'll go scroll and do various different things. I guess I'm showing my age by saying I'm on Facebook instead of Instagram or TikTok or something. But um, so I know for me to stay on target, I do much better if I have a physical paper book with my to-do list and my things that I have, whatever I've got going on and my ideas. And so I think supporting this, and this is where the autonomy piece comes in as well, is like asking them and saying, hey, what helps you to be your best? What gets in the way? What can you do to get rid of those things that are in the way so you can perform your best? What are your fears? What are you excited about? Using that by asking the team, hey, what motivates you? How can your teammates help you? How can you help your teammates? Then they're invested. And then when it's not working, you say, hey, what went wrong? What do you think went wrong? Well, you're, instead of coming in saying, hey, I think this is what's wrong, you need to do this, have them invested in their ideas because they chose it. So they're saying, oh, you're like, oh, hey, I noticed how many balls went down without being covered. And then you're like, okay, what was it? What got in the way? Oh, I forgot. Okay, what do you think would help? Oh, I need to do this, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like
Absolutely.
sometimes we go straight for, I'm going to make you do that,
Right.
instead of like, hey, have them be a little invested in it. So they're like, do you want to get better?
Right.
And how do you want to get better? And what's the best way to get there? And just help them because they're moving forward. They know what it takes to get themselves out of a slump.
Yep.
They know what they need from other people and they're more likely to give it instead. I mean, you see it all the time with kids, particularly. I mean, you see it with adults too, but where they'll be like, find someone to blame. That, oh, that person blew it for us. That
Right.
person did, blame the ref, blame the other team. Oh, those kids were older than us or whatever. And it's like, own it, take responsibility. And while you're taking responsibility, use that as feedback, not as like, it means that you suck, but it means that you have an opportunity to get better.
Absolutely. And there's also a big difference between someone being experienced enough to see if someone doesn't want to be there, and if someone who wants to be there is just making mental mistakes, right? Even at the Olympic level, like someone's covering position one and someone tips. It's like, oh shit, and next thing you know, they're diving. So even at that level, there are mental mistakes, and
Right.
no one on this planet is not going to say that that person doesn't want to be there,
Right.
or that
Like, I think
person
they
or that
walk
person doesn't
away.
want to win,
Totally. But yeah, but it's
Yeah.
like helping them to unpack what got in the way and they'll be like, oh, and let them think about it, right? And not like ask the question, because so often coaches will ask the question and immediately give them the answer that they think.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, what got in the way? What were you thinking about in that moment? And they go, oh, actually, I started thinking about what I was going to do when I was going to hit it. Oh, I thought they were going to go there. Oh, what were you watching? But helping them to do it
Yeah.
and like these mental mistakes, absolutely. But this is the focus. How do you train focus? Okay, then help them with, have some kind of a mindfulness meditation practice or something.
Right.
But like help them figure out so that they are then empowered to own this stuff and not just go, oops, I did it again.
Yeah.
And you can sing your Britney right now, but
I think I sang it last night, but go ahead.
but yeah, I mean, it's
Where was I
like,
last night? Sorry. Go ahead.
but just empowering people to take full responsibility and to help them to look for what they can do, look at the pathways. The definition of hope, it has three areas, and it's like you have a goal and you have agency, which means you believe you can do it, and you have multiple pathways. That like if something doesn't work, then you find other pathways. And that is like they can hope if they believe that. It's like, so we need to help them know that, hey, if something doesn't work, you try something else.
Yeah.
It's like not being stuck. And one of the other things, like thinking about that self-discipline, there's a book I read a couple of years ago and I went revisit it recently. It's called Self-Reg. And it talks about how so much of self-discipline is actually more self-regulation and being able to manage the stimuli around you and being able to focus rather than like kids who get overwhelmed by like bright lights and loud noises and it's super disruptive in classrooms. And the teachers think, oh, this kid, it's their discipline, but it's actually their inability to regulate from the environment. And so I think that like that is we need to help them, help the athletes, help our kids pay attention to what's going on inside them so that they can stay regulated, which helps them to stay focused.
Yeah.
So that then they can notice, oh shoot, sorry. My daughter trying to contact me, but help them stay regulated and stay focused, which allows them to then achieve what they can achieve.
Yeah. And it's also, I guess the more you know, the more you've been coaching and the more you've been doing this, the more you're able to detect these types of personalities ahead of time. I mean, I'll give you an example where you might not condone the punishment, but you're like, I kind of get it, right? My first day on the job at Endless Summer, beach volleyball, right?
Yeah.
She gives me a group called the Knuckleheads. The Knuckleheads are all little girls who are committed. They're 16, 17. They already know what school they're going to, right? Can't have a young coach them because they're like, this dude's, this guy's the same age as me. So she's looking for someone old school. This is Duran, right? Forbes. She's looking for someone a little bit old school. I'm a little bit more, what I call Brooklyn strict. You know what I'm saying? How we raise our kids out there. So they're doing a drill and they're supposed to collect the balls. We call it shag, right? Shag the balls, right? And there's one girl walking while everyone's walking my practice. So I'm not going to name her by name. I'm like, are you walking in my practice? And she looks at me and she goes, like that, and turns around and walks away. So I do this. And I told this story, but again, it bears repeating. I go, and I call another girl over. It's Presley. It's her daughter, the program director's daughter. And I'm like, do you know what the plank is? And she said, yeah, it's this. So she gets down on the plank. I'm like, very good. She tries to get up. I said, no, don't get up. Don't get up. And I'm pointing out names because I'm terrible with names. So I'm like, Serena, plank. Karina, plank. Natalie, plank. Why? Plank. So the girl who smirked at me was going to go on the plank. And I said, not you. I said, them. You shag. And when you're done, they can get up. So now the whole team is looking at her like this. Like, really? The lower age girls on the other net are looking at me like, oh, wow, he just did that, to the rebels. The parents go, yeah. And Duran says, I freaking love this guy. So that's a punishment or a consequence that some might disagree, but me as a coach, I arbitrarily thought super necessary because it's my first day on the job, and I had to set a precedence where the dichotomy is you respect me the same way you respect Dane because he's an Olympic coach, or just say, hey, I don't know this guy well enough to be doing that. Let me just do what he says and allow each other to feel ourselves out. That's a classic example of how someone might disagree with punishment or consequence that I take to my grave, that I deem at that time super necessary.
So I guess the question for me is, how do you earn respect? And how do you set expectations? And how do you hold limits?
Right.
Right? How do you hold boundaries of like, this is what I expect? And building that from the beginning of like, here's how I expect our relationship to be. Here's what I expect from you. Here's what you can expect from me.
Yep.
And so that's like, I know that there's a lot of that, particularly like that age of like middle school, whatever, like testing.
Whatever,
limits.
16s and 17s and
Right,
the
middle
South
school,
Bay.
high school, whatever.
That's the sample
it's like
size.
they're at this big autonomy phase of their life of like, you can't tell me what to do. What are you doing? That's exactly where they are. And so it is hard because what we tend to want to do is like, oh, we jump into this power struggle.
Right.
We jump into the power struggle because we're like, you're saying no? Well, forget that. I'm saying yes. And so for me, it's like, how can we start off on the right foot where we can build that relationship and build that trust? Because you want to have the trust, you need the trust. Because if you want to, it's funny, I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about, it was like a preschool situation though, of like this preschool teacher I know, if she thought that her relationship with a kid was sort of iffy, she'd ask them to do her a favor. Like just a small favor. Oh, can you go get me the scissors or whatever? And if the kid was like, no, she's like, I have worked with you on the relationship.
There it is.
And so, but this is it. It's a relationship because you need the relationship. If you have the relationship with those kids, they will do anything for you.
Right.
If you don't, you have to keep upping the punishment, the whatever consequences, whatever. You have to keep making it. You kind of have to keep forcing it. And the goal is like, and this is what I love seeing coaches like Karch and coaches like Pete Carroll and coaches like Phil Jackson, who are so empowering of their athletes. I love seeing those relationships. I love seeing those teams do well.
You mean Phil, right? Phil Jackson? Yeah.
Phil Jackson. Did I say Pete?
He's so good,
Carroll,
though.
Phil Jackson.
He's
sorry.
so good. Go ahead.
I know, but this is the thing. You see them and they are very much, they show, I trust my team. I have instilled in this is, and that those teams are super tight knit. All of those teams are super tight knit. And I think it's just, I think we need to see, I remember John Kessel, who, he was a legend at USA Volleyball.
Yeah.
I remember him saying to me, if we did heart surgery, if a heart surgeon performed heart surgery today, the same way they did 30 years ago, they would be sued for malpractice.
Of course.
And yet we have coaches coaching now the same way they coached 30 years ago. And we know from all the research that we shouldn't be doing that, that
All
it's
the
not as
research collected.
effective. That it's not as effective,
Mm-hmm.
and it destroys relationships, and you end up getting a lot more people dropping out.
I agree.
And so for me, I mean, I definitely, obviously, I come from a very different place, partly from, from being a woman, but also like from the research that I've been around. And it definitely takes longer. It's much easier to parent and to coach by just making them afraid of you and saying, you got to do this.
Right.
But if you build the relationship, it ultimately pays off, because they're willing to do things because they care about you. I mean, you look, those kids will do anything for Karch.
Absolutely.
Kids, those women.
Yeah, and those girls. Hey, that was 5 years ago. All of those girls are in college right now. They would take a bullet for me too. So it's not like
it's not the. I mean, it doesn't just necessarily.
It's not like the bees with
it.
honey thing is the only way to go. Right. And Sarah, the reason why I told the story the way I did was some old school coaches are reactionary to that defiance. I wasn't. What did I do? I sat when I told you the story. I did this. When she did that to me, I did this. I waited. I compartmentalized it. I registered it, and I made a decision, not out of emotion, because that's what old school coaches are like. How dare you, this and that. It was a great practice, and at the end of the practice, I said, "Listen, every single one of you have my respect until you abuse it," and they got it. They got it because they knew what I knew. If that were Dane, or if that were someone that they grew up, like knowing that's a college, or Stein or whatever, someone that they grew up in their region, instead of some guy with a Yankee hat coming out of nowhere, right? If Dane said, "Are you walking in my practice?" She's running. She's not smirking at Dane. So we're not trying to just put all these kids in one lump. Oh, that kid shouldn't be punished and this and that. And I'm very, very careful when I say research. I say research collected, because I can give you a sample size of girls in South Bay. I can give you a sample size of the boys I coach in Harlem, New York, City College, New York, City Tech, predominantly West Indian. They have a strict upbringing. So not all, just like no two players or no three players or no 4 or 5 players are alike. No two old school coaches are alike. I just gave you an example where I'm new in this area, and I felt I had to set a precedent. It was on my first day, and my Brooklyn virtue says if someone does that to you, and if you let it go, they feel like they can do it anytime they want.
And I suppose that's the difference, right?
Right.
So for me, I come from this place of limits with empathy, right? Setting expectations up front.
Yes.
And then, hey, it seems like didn't recognize what was going on, or you wanted to test and see what it's all about.
Yep.
What do you think we should do?
But I repaired that. I said every single one of you have my respect, unless you abuse it. And I said, is that fair? And they all and they all said, yes, coach. And then from there, we're good, man. We're good. Like Catherine Miskowski, Natalie, I coached her. Right, she's going to play for Stein, right? I think Eden, Tatiana, Karina's already playing for Dane at USC. So we have 3 girls going to USC, 1 UCLA, 1 Arizona, 1 Grand Canyon, and 2 Long Beach State. So we ended up leading the nation in recruitments per capita because Duran had a mixture. She had Andrew Dentler, who was an awesome coach, Rob, who's a kind of a disciplinarian, but she had 2 old school guys, but not, like you said, not. I'm very careful saying old school, because old school we're putting into this one, just like the kids. We're not careful to put all these kids in one category. We can't put all old school. We can't put all the coaches in one category. Very much the same way we can't put all these kids. Like the mistake is you put all the kids in one category. You think you're only supposed to coach one way. That's where the old school fails.
Definitely.
That's where the old school fails. But something like people need to understand is not just like no 2 or 3 kids are alike. No 2 or 3 old school kids are alike. We self-correct. I'd like to consider myself old school, but there's so many things I would never do or say that I said or did 10 years ago. I wouldn't have my outside hitter crying at a college game because I yelled at him in front of his girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? And back then I was defensive. I'm like, and I said this on the last podcast. I'm like, your girlfriend's not looking at me like I yelled at you. Your girlfriend's looking at me like you played like garbage. I'm not. I've evolved. I've evolved. I'm still old school, but I've evolved. I'm a different kind of old school because I'd be like, hey, I apologize. Let's repair this. Right now, we got a game to win, and I'm with you, and we could have that conversation. I'm like, you want to have that conversation with your girl after the match? We could do that,
Right. How are we going to get better? How do we get past this?
Yes.
Is the question, right? It's not. And this is where, so this is kind of where we differ. And it's just like we have the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
We want to do well. We want to maintain the relationship. We want to understand.
Mm-hmm. And we both agree that the net result is not winning. Like for us, look, if I'm in college, all right, it is about winning. Otherwise, you don't have a job. But like coaching professionals, I can coach any professional I want randomly here and there. Club, you know what I'm saying? It's all about the kids and it's all about the parents. So, but the thing that we have in common is the net result is not winning. The net result is building character, having kids push through situations that are problematic, right? That might be problematic instead of just, I don't know, instead of just whatever. So, but that's very unique for our audience to know. Because to me, they think I'm coming from like win the game at all costs. That's not what I'm saying here.
And the other thing I find is really interesting, you can't control winning.
No.
Whether you win or not, all you can control is what you do. Like you can control like your mental state, your regulation, you can control the movements you make, you can control what your focus is on. Mm-hmm. You can control that. And if you focus on those things, you're way more likely to win than if you start to worry about the score.
Yeah, dude, it's very, very much like theater. Like, greatness is what the audience decides, not what you got to keep it about that work, right? And I guess volleyball greatness, which they associate with winning, you can't be thinking about winning because, like you said, it's not a controllable, if at all, a completely controllable circumstance.
You don't know what the other team's gonna. You can't make them play better or worse.
No.
Like they can be playing lights out, and if you're control. I remember when I was working with UCLA, that was one of the things we talked about. It's like after the game, like these girls would come off and they'd lost a game, say. And I'd be like, okay, well, how'd you do in each of these? I'd be like, okay, how'd you do serving? How was your setting? How was your blocking? How was your hitting? How was your passing? How was your mental state? And they would be like, oh, actually, this was pretty good. Oh, this wasn't bad. This was great. Oh, we didn't do well at this. And they felt so much better afterwards instead of just looking at the score and feeling like, oh, we lost, and having it be this dichotomy of like, you're a winner or you're a loser. But it was more like, hey, this is feedback now. Mm-hmm. This is like, what would we do if we wanted to get better at that thing? How do we fix that?
Sarah, people have to appreciate that old saying. It's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. Everybody's like, that's a bunch of crap. No, that is a real thing. And the reason is...
Well, how you play the game determines whether you win or lose.
But sometimes...
But not necessarily.
No, but sometimes you can win a game and the way you played it feels like a loss.
Oh, for sure. And that's what I was talking about with the Bodie Miller comment earlier. Mm-hmm. Is like you can have a crappy run, skiing and still win a gold medal. Yep. Do you remember that? You remember that speed skater, that Australian speed skater years ago who like everyone ended up falling and he got a gold medal? You remember that? It was a short track, which is so intense. And it was this guy's name was Stephen Bradbury. And people still talk about doing a Bradbury is like when you like win despite all your best efforts.
I got to search it while we're talking.
Oh, you got to look it up.
You know why? Because his name is probably going to be associated with that. Stephen Bradbury.
Oh, for sure. Bradbury. Yeah.
Go ahead.
But that's the thing though. Like I don't want you to come off. And who was it? Oh my God, I can't remember the coach, but some like legendary coach talked about winning being the best deodorant. Right, is because you win and you don't know that you stink.
Yeah.
Right. If you're doing, and it's like, this is why I so much prefer us that let's do feedback on all the different areas that we're interested in so that we can actually get better, because winning and losing, that doesn't give us anything. All it tells us is that we won or we lost. And on the day, we happen to have fewer mistakes or whatever than the other team.
Here it is. Hold on. Where it is. 2002 Winter Olympics. After all his opponents were involved in a last corner pileup, he was the first athlete from Australia in the Southern Hemisphere to win an Olympic gold medalist. That's a sidebar. That's a sideline. Side note that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you gotta look at. You gotta see the video. It's pretty funny.
Oh my God. I'll put, let me actually see if I can find the video, but it's hilarious. Just like a bunch of rabbits fell and the turtle just comes,
Totally. And I mean, obviously, you had to be good enough to make it to the final, because getting to a final in short track in the Olympics is pretty good.
The most unexpected medal in history.
Really good.
There's a YouTube video, the most unexpected medal in history.
Welcome back to the world.
Stupid ads. But Sarah, while I'm looking for this, how did you wind up in the Olympics in 2000?
Gosh, that's a tough one. We actually got we were the third Australian team. And at the time they let 3 teams go, because they let the host country have an extra team if you'd earned 2 other spots. So we were still pretty good. Like, we were still in the top, we were still in the top 20 in the world. But we ended up making it because if we'd been from any other country, we wouldn't have been there.
Right.
So, but it was still, yeah, it's funny because I sometimes, I'll be like, is there an asterisk next to my Olympics? Because we, because we got there as the third team. Mm-hmm. But, I don't know if you remember, but in that Olympics we were the 22nd seed out of the 24 teams, and they were playing a double elimination. Our first match was against Jenny Johnson-Jordan, who's the assistant coach at UCLA, and Annette Davis. And we played the game of our lives.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
We got to 13 all.
Nice.
In the game to 15, and we ended up losing at 15-13. And it was a bummer, but it was like such an amazing match, and it was such a great experience. And, it was still like, I felt terrible having, not performed in terms of finishing well. But we'd worked hard. We'd worked hard to get there. We'd been to all those different tournaments and done well enough to be in that top, in that top 20 and to make it there. But I don't know, it's fun to be in that club.
Hell yeah.
And we went to... They can
never take it away.
Yeah, they can't take that away from you. And, we did play well. And oh my gosh, the experiences we had on the world tour, I still have so many lifelong friends that I met because you travel together. Like, you see each other every week, and you see them at breakfast, and you hang out together, you practice together, and you hang out after games. And still a lot of the guys on the American tour, girls and guys here. And actually it's fun. Some of the players that played when I played, their kids are now playing. And some of the kids, my friend Deborah, her daughter played in the Olympics.
Nice.
She was like 19, and she ended up making it for the Netherlands, which was so fun.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, one of my volleyball mentors, Aldis Lucis of Latvia, he played at UCLA, but he didn't get to set because that was Karch and St. John running the 6-2, right?
Yeah.
He was my volleyball mentor as far as helping me conquer demons from the neck up. And he was the one somewhere in the late 90s and early 2000s that was helping me compartmentalize how I was coached, which is very old school, which produced the results and how that works for people and how that doesn't. He himself is an old school coach guy, and he was no excuses guy. And I in many ways, I'm still that way. But I think I found a way to do it where, because of him, I found a way to do it where I don't have to say I don't tolerate excuses. They just, the girls, someone's like, oh, I'm sorry I'm late, or I'm sorry I missed that drill. But it's not like, for me, it's not like they have to make up excuses in their head to escape punishment or at the same time to lull on this unfounded level of guilt for just missing one freaking play. It's not, the game's not till 1, it's the 21. And his goddaughter is Tina Gradina.
Oh wow, that's so awesome.
So she's she had a chance to compete for that bronze, right? And
totally.
She still owes Dana another year. Like everybody,
awesome.
Like people have come up and asked me, and I am totally hater Jay when it comes to this. They said, who do you think is the best beach player to come out of USC? Like the beach team. They asked me between Sarah Hughes and Kelly Clays, and I'm like, Tina Gradina, if we're talking in the big scheme of things, right? It's April Ross, but like
she didn't play in the beach program.
NC but she was indoor, right? She wasn't on the beach team. There was no beach team back then. But I'm like, why not Tina? Why not Tina, who's already just as good as them, and his medals higher than them, without having the chemistry of her partner all year round, right? Because she had to play with Kraft. She had to play college with Kraft and train with Kraft. So why not her, who, by the way, still has another year to finish her story, her story. So yeah, and she's. Go ahead. No, I said she's absolutely gorgeous too. Like she's one of these people like that looks good in civilian clothes and in a bathing suit. She's yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I wanted to just pop back to the Olympic thing.
Please.
In '96, so 95, I guess, my partner and I had been trying to qualify, and we played in every qualifier, and we made it to a bunch of main draws, and we were creeping up on the number 2 Australian team, and but we still had, because of the way their system, we still had to play in every qualifier, even though we got it finished ahead of them in every tournament. It was your best finish from 94 and all your finishes from 95 would give you your final. We didn't play in 94, so we're already starting behind, and we played in every qualifier. We end up, I think we were like, it was something like, we were like 4 to, I don't know, I can't remember the number. I feel like it was really small, like 4 points behind the second team going into the last qualifying tournament for Atlanta, which was in Brazil.
Okay.
And at the time, they didn't do country quota playoffs first. Everyone played in the qualifiers. So if you met a Brazilian team first round, they were one of these top Brazilian teams that they hadn't played off against each other. You just played them.
Right.
And so we were so close, and then we lost in the qualifier in the last tournament to this top, like a really decent Brazilian team, and didn't make it to Atlanta.
Oh.
And I remember I was so devastated because we were ranked, we were top 10 in the world, but we were ranked so much higher than so many teams that actually did make it to the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And I realized that the Olympics is not about the best teams in the world, it's about the best teams from each country. And so I think my disappointment about missing out on Atlanta was way more significant.
Yeah, because
getting to Sydney.
Because there were 3 worthy teams.
Yeah, and then getting to Sydney, I mean, it was a very interesting process. But I think I played my best volleyball after I went to the Olympics, because I then played on the AVP for another 10 years.
Which tournament did you win? You have a first on your BVB. Let me put it up.
Hanley in
sorry. Yeah. It was 2001.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know where that was. Where was the tour stop for that?
I was in Muskegon, Michigan.
Oh, cool.
So Linda Hanley asked me to play, which was just amazing. So I was friends with her, and played against her so much on the world tour. And we practiced together and played together, and we had a really good season. It was really fun. And then the next year I took off to have my daughter.
Look at that.
But that year
Holly
too.
McPeak and Lisa and Fantana and Youngs. That's pretty stacked. What do you say? What?
That was the thing. Is like, I almost feel like, I got to the Olympics, and for me that's almost a side note, because it was like, okay, we were the 3rd Australian team, and it wasn't as hard to get to the Olympics as it was. That sounds terrible to say.
Say it.
But you know what I mean? It's
yes.
Like we got there, and it was great, and we played well and whatever. But I feel like I definitely developed way more as a volleyball player after that. I remember that year I played with Linda, and we had like a bunch of semifinals, and we won a tournament, and Patty Dodd actually asked me to come to there was like this exhibition thing in some tournament in Finland. And so I went with, like, Mike went with Mike Lambert, and Angenio was there, and I was there and playing with Patty. And Mike Dodd said to me, it was the best compliment I ever had. He said, "You've turned into a really good volleyball player." And I was like, oh my God, Mike Dodd just said that to me.
That man rose me the wrong way, but go ahead.
But it was like getting to that point, and that was when I had developed. And it's like, I almost felt like I earned that, whereas I didn't as much earn like I did, but you know what I mean? The whole Olympics thing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm more proud of my win in the AVP than, I don't know.
Well,
I don't
listen,
know if that's true, but
I think, look, does the AVP not being as big a stage for the Olympics help too? Like once you've had a stage that big where
No.
you're like, no state, this is
No, it's nothing to do with that because
Okay.
I think I played much better volleyball after that.
there's just
I
being a
played
better
much,
player
much
then.
better volleyball.
Gotcha.
But I remember, like, I had the game of my life, like I mentioned, that game against Jenny and Annette. And I remember walking into that stadium and it was insane. There were like, I can't remember, I think it was 10,000 people, or maybe 15. I think pretty sure it was 10, packed. And of course, hometown, I mean, not hometown, but home country, like everyone was on our side and it was so loud. And I remember standing in the little tunnel about to go out, it just felt so surreal. I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, it's just volleyball. It's the same game, same, same court, same net. Everything's the same. It's just, this is all peripheral.
Yeah. It's like a fighter entrance, right? Like
totally. And I was it was sort of an out of body experience because I went out there and I was so not myself. I was just like revving up the crowd and I don't play like that. But I fed off the fuel from the energy of the crowd.
It's like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, but it was really fun and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was just such an amazing experience.
Nice.
And then, I'm glad that, I was old though. Not old, but I turned 30 right after the Olympics. The Olympics were in September. My birthday's October 6th and I turned 30 on the day of the Welcome Home Parade in Perth.
Oh, come on.
So they had a parade for my 30th birthday.
Wow. You're like, I was wrong. It is my birthday.
Which was super fun. But I didn't start playing volleyball till high school. Till college, basically. And then ended up, at 30 is when I was playing in the Olympics and then had my best volleyball years, the next 10 years after that.
That's freaking awesome. Who was the partner in the AVP that you enjoyed playing with the most? There's the most competitive, there's this, there's that, but like as far as like you just enjoyed fellowshipping with them off the court. You had some success on the court. Look, it's so, in this world, it's soft as cotton. Like to call someone your favorite player to some people is a slap in the face to the other. We're not doing that. Who's your favorite player?
So I'm going to give you a couple, but I love playing with Linda. Like she is, I don't know if you've ever talked to her. She is hilarious. Oh my gosh, she's so funny.
Well, Linda's the kind of person where I could have talked to her and not know who she was because she talks to everybody the same way. From what I heard about her.
Oh my gosh,
I could have been talking to her at Starbucks and not known who she was because she talks to people from here and not from up here like an asshole. So. Yeah.
So, she for sure is like right up there because it was awesome. And then Angie Akers is like one of my best friends. Yeah. We were super tight. And, and I played one season with Tammy Leibel, who she used to be Tammy Liley. She was captain of the indoor team.
Yep.
And
nobody ran a slide like that woman, boy.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing. And she was so fun. And she was so I played with her when I was pregnant with Zach.
Okay.
I was like, I don't know how many months pregnant I was. We ended up playing in Vegas in the end of year tournament. And I was definitely several months pregnant because he was born. It was like September and he was born in February.
Oh my goodness.
But she had just been playing with Diane Denekashe, who then had to drop out because she was pregnant. And then she started playing with me. And then I was pregnant and we finished the season out. But she was so dynamic. She would, if she picked the ball up.
Y'all make it sound like COVID, like there wasn't a guy involved. It's just like, hi, I passed this pregnancy on to you.
Yeah, totally. She passed it on to me because Tammy's like, is it me? Did I do that?
I get pregnant like that? Who needs a dude, man? Who needs a guy? Sorry, go ahead.
But like seeing her, how like scramble play, long rally, and she gets up there and bangs a ball. Like so often you would see previously is like scramble play, someone's chipping it, someone's shooting it, but she was like aggressive throughout. And it was just really, it was really inspirational for me because I'd always been early on, I was kind of a chippy, shooty kind of a player. And then it took, actually the Australian coaches really helped me change my swing so that I could actually hit. Yeah. But so she was fun.
Yeah. And lastly, wow, we've been going at it. Someone's gonna have to pee in a minute. Showing how old we are, I guess. I had Sharif on the podcast last week from Qatar, and one of the lines I've been riding the last few episodes is money and success does not change you. It shows who you are.
Mm.
And going back to some of the people we were talking about, Karch, you won an AVP title. And the reason, it's more of a statement, but you can follow up. The reason why I guess these people are revered and look up to them, but only from my own personal view, because there's so many people that you might like that I don't know, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. Like Dodd kind of rubbed me the wrong way the last 2 times I met him, but that's different because everybody likes him, and I'm gonna leave that alone. But Karch's success only really showed who he was. He's this person that likes to compete, but understand that he cares deeply about the sport and the people that plays it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're doing great stuff for parenting, to be better parents, better relationships. Your AVP crown, you going to the Olympics. These things didn't shape who you were as a personality. You know, psychologically, maybe you have a different approach, and maybe these things give you a mission. Right. And later on, you're like, I want to do that. But it's very, very important to me. Like, no, if you have money, if you don't, if you're like the same person, personality wise, those are the things that I want to teach my kids. Those are the things that I myself have prided myself on doing. I got money now, but it wasn't always that way, right? I was military service. I was sleeping on trains for 6 months. You know, my mom kicked me out of the house when I was 18 years old. So, so I've been through, a whole bunch of things where I needed help, and I've done things where I've helped people. I've done prison ministries. I used to go to Rikers Island and Brooklyn House and like talk about Jesus or talk about sports. So the reason why I wanted you on this podcast is because there are so many things about you when I'm just reading your bio or whatever, and I'm like, how much different are you now from the Sarah Straton in 2000, and how much of you is the same? That's a hell of a way to finish this episode.
No, but I feel like I'm a lot different.
Okay.
And I want to be, because I think we're going to evolve, and then we're going to grow. And if we don't, then there's something wrong. Exactly. Evolution. I think I was caught up with the importance of being a top player of that. And I think it was kind of defining, like wanting to be a certain way, and that like being a volleyball player kind of defined who I was. And especially being a top player. And I remember I was just horrified when I lose to a team that was ranked way below, that we should on paper win, that we should beat. I think I'm way more open and understanding of people. And I think that's a lot of the work that I've done, with the parenting, like the training that I did was really significant. And the positive psychology has helped me to be more optimistic and to understand that, like, to see the good in people. Like, I see people as coming from like having their best intent. Like, people are trying their best to do things well. And sometimes their strategies are horrible. Like, sometimes their strategies are terrible, and they want life to be better, and they want, I don't know, they want world peace, or they just want their life to be better. But the strategies they use are sometimes damaging to other people, and they want their freedom, or they want their, I don't know. It's like, I come from this place of understanding that everyone's trying to meet their needs the best they can. And so I don't think of good guys and bad guys. And when someone does something that's bad, I'm more trying to understand what's going on for them. And it's not excusing, like I still don't excuse it, but I can understand it. And so I think for me, I've evolved in that way of where I'm a little kinder to myself, a little more like growth oriented and I'm trying to find the balance between self-acceptance and self-growth, like being okay with the fact that my body's changed because I'm 50, and also wanting to feel better and do better, and being, so I feel like both of those two things, like I can sometimes get caught, like I feel like if I'm too stuck in, okay, I'm fine, like self-acceptance, I'm just not going to push myself. But if I get too stuck in growth and like having to do better, always having to be better, then I never get to chill and have peace. So I don't know. I think I'm way more self-reflective, and I suppose just a little calmer and a little less judgmental. I don't know. I don't know if I was terrible, but I'm definitely, I've been a perfectionist, and I'm trying to work on that. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Yeah. And I'm so, like, now I'm back loving playing volleyball again just for fun. And
So you're playing sixes?
I did play in the six man, but I just play COVID. During COVID, I went down and got back into volleyball,
Right.
like when we couldn't really do anything else, and playing on the beach and going down early in the mornings. We played 6:30 to 9, and it was so lovely, and just appreciating being out there and this beautiful scenery, and the ocean, the sun's rising, it's gorgeous, fun friends. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like I had so many great connections through volleyball, and just rebuilding those. And because I love people, I'm an extrovert, and I love, like, communicating with people. And I think volleyball has just been this amazing thread throughout my life, and I'm so grateful for it, and I want to keep doing it till I'm 80 at least.
Yeah, let the nurses wheel us out. I mean, yeah,
Exactly.
this is what you just said was important, because there are people who share your same sentiment that might see it as an unapologetic flaw. Or some people are like, am I investing too much in this? Is this thing that's making me will eventually break me? But I thought you said it really, really well. It's okay to be that way, and it's okay to know that the sport that you love also forms these emotional bonds, these fellowships. Basically, the people in whom we surround ourselves with. Right? We don't have a lot of close friends that don't play the sport. Or that, all right. We don't have a whole lot of, right. On me, I'm always gonna, for some reason, I'm always gonna have more female friends than male friends. But everywhere I move, I'm like, I gotta have three male friends. And it's a cool thing. Like New York, I had three male friends, all three of them played or coached. And here, I have three male friends, all three of them play or coach. So, Sarah, well said. Well said. Is there like a particular site that people want to know more about what you're doing, the growth mindset and this and that, the website? I know you're revamping that stuff, but I look, people can just do a Google search on your name and presume to know a lot about you, and they'd be right about 50% of it.
Yeah. So my website is, if you know how to spell my name, it's my name.com, but it's also weareevergrowing.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have Evergrowing Sports and Evergrowing Parent Education Coaching are both little Facebook pages that I haven't been very good about updating, but there's a lot of good stuff on there, and people can reach out to me there for sure.
Dude, we got to do this again, because I wanted to talk about the MBO that just happened. You know what I'm saying? Like Betsy tying the game with like two aces like that. Betsy has that killer look. Betsy Flint, who's Emily Day's partner, who I thought would have been a great match for Kerry Walsh. Because Kerry Walsh, like Betsy's kind of like a poor girl's Misty May, where in a sense that if you serve her, she has this mentality like, I'm going to F you up. Like physically, psychologically, you're going to be sorry you ever served me type thing. And I didn't get that, with respect, I didn't get that from Brooke Sweat. I didn't get that from Hughes. I didn't get that. And I don't get that from Sponsel.
It's finding the energy that balances you and not, that is going to complement you and help you actually do better.
Yeah.
Rather than, and I definitely think that Kerry was missing that.
Yep. I mean,
and Brooke's a great player, and she just needs the right partner.
And I recognize that face right away. She's like, when it was 18-20, I saw her face. I told my wife, I said, she's going to get an ace. And then she got an ace, and then she got another one, and I was just like, "Wow, you called it." All right, shit. I guess that's all I got. Hey, we got to do this again. We left so much on the table.
Awesome.
But,
thank you.
But it's crazy because I got to believe it or not, I have to prepare for another podcast. I got another one coming up. Nuss and Cloth, Kristen Nuss and Taryn Cloth.
Nice.
So for
fun to revisit the old days. And,
exactly. Thank you so much for coming on my show. Listen, for everybody out there, Sarah Straton might love you, but I don't love you. In fact, I can't stand you. In fact, we're out of here, okay? So for all of you on your iPad and iPhone and desktop or Droid or whatever the hell you listen to at the lunchline to listen to this podcast, for Sarah Straton, Olympian, not former Olympian, I'm Jason DeBeers. This is episode 105. I'm actually going to hit my music. Stay with me, and we're out. Come check out the Option Podcast on optionvb.com. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify and on YouTube under the NY Varsity Sports handle. You're going to love what you hear.